Another Sunday, another case of the Scaries to start your work week. Welcome to the newest edition of the Sunday Scaries, where we have all your gore, lore, and more, covering all the latest horror happenings, slicing open all the latest horror news, and dissecting it bit by bit, finding all those juicy innards. Pour that cup of coffee and turn on your fright light while we take you on a tour of terror. And another fun week on the channel. Again, we slowed it down a little bit, but we dropped a jam-packed, huge splattercast of one of the most iconic films, at least on the channel here, of Silver Bullet, which was just oh so much fun, especially just consuming all the extra content around it. We did do a little shout out for the audiobook for the that we found on YouTube, which was a
Hmm.
lot of fun. And I will admit I am going to go back and listen to that one more time at least.
Oh
But
yeah,
what a fun episode that was.
yeah. I think it's going to be tough for me not to go back and listen to that when I go and revisit this. Again, it's just super well produced. Really enjoyed it. I mean, we talked to the guy Jacob Walsh this week as he, reached out and said, hey, thanks for enjoying it. I really like the content. So thank you, Jacob, again for making such a stellar piece. I really hope that they do more of that. I didn't get to peruse the channel too much to see if there's others, but I'd really like to see his take on a few other shorter King stories or even just some other horror stories in general.
Yeah, because I mean, we talk about in the episode, those things are just so digestible that,
Mm,
again, I haven't been able to look through the channel either. So I'm fingers crossed that there's a few more on there. I would love to just be able to, put it on and just kind of go about my day and do a few house chores while listening to it. So
hmm.
I think we're definitely take a look at the channel a little more in depth because, I mean, again, like you said, it's just so much fun to listen to and covering Silver Bullet, Cycle the Werewolf. You never have to twist our arms to
Never.
dive into that type of content.
Not at all. And even after we have it's like 2 hours, 36 minutes. Granted, we do our little 1 year celebration talk for about 20, 30 minutes at the start. So, it's like it's more like 2 hours. I feel like we could talk Silver Bullet again for at least another 2 hours. So, it's gonna be one I imagine, depending on how long we do this for, how many years. I could see us in like 3 or 4 years going back to the well a little bit and saying, Silver Bullet, how are we feeling now? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure there's more stuff that we didn't talk about that I'd like to, as far as behind the scenes that we need to learn and figure out. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's still a lot more we can get from Silver Bullet as we are diving deeper into doing video essays. I'm sure there's something in there that we can do. Um,
absolutely. That'd be a weird one. I feel like we'd have to collab on that because, like, we both love it and we both have a lot to say about it. So, I feel like we couldn't do it justice, just you or me splitting it up. So,
yeah. We'll
yeah.
have to do, and again, we're brainstorming as this is recording. But we could do a giant video essay on dissecting all the top werewolf movies because
Oh, yeah.
the werewolf DNA is ingrained in the Splattercast channel. So
Absolutely. We're big werewolf fans. So, but yeah, I think without further delay, we should probably get into the news.
let's hop into it.
Alrighty. And to kick things off, we decided one of the first things, big piece of news that dropped a few weeks ago. It's kind of been circling in and out of our, I guess you'd say, picks for the week when it comes to the news stories. But, it was just something that the first week it dropped, there were bigger stories, and we just kind of had to cut it. And then ever since then, we've had a couple of stories here and there, and then some biased stories from me with shark shit and other things coming up that got it booted. But we're talking about the Dan Stevens, or I guess not the Dan Stevens, but Dan Stevens is joining the cast of the untitled Universal Monsters movie from Radio Silence. Now, I know we're huge Dan Stevens fans. I think that both of us really enjoy his work. I mean, in all the stuff not all the stuff he's been in, but like there's a good deal of stuff he's been in. My personal favorite being The Guest. And, I'm excited for him. Also, he is going to be in the upcoming King Kong versus Godzilla sequel. So, he's definitely somebody that I always try to keep an eye on. Not all of his projects are major hits, but when he does stuff that's in this horror realm, man, like that's the stuff that gets me.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched The Guest when it had come out, and then I haven't revisited it since. But I remember enjoying it quite a bit, and he's been in a few things that I've also enjoyed. And I think he's one of those actors that, there are actors out there that you, as soon as they announce or attach to a property, you immediately get excited no matter what's going on. Now, looking at the Radio Silence's untitled Universal Monster movie, I mean, I think that already gets us intrigued enough to wonder what they're going to be doing. I know uh, we had our brief discussions about it a couple weeks ago, but adding Dan Stevens to this, and this is already a jam-packed cast once we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it. But Dan Stevens is someone, once you announce that he's in it, I'm already intrigued to see what his performance is going to be, especially in the horror realm.
Oh yeah, and this is the one. For those who don't know all the details, this is going to be starring Melissa Barrera. So she's already worked with these guys with Scream. I'm kind of surprised that Samara Weaving wasn't named in this. Maybe they're kind of switching up on their main girl, but I don't know. Samara Weaving's kind of starting to get her own career going with a lot
Yeah.
of other properties under her name that aren't just in the horror realm. But yeah, I think that's definitely Melissa Barrera. Say what you will about the most recent Scream films. She's a highlight. I definitely like her a lot. But yeah, this is pretty cool, man. I know that it's kind of being pointed, and they even say that here, that it was at one point titled Dracula's Daughter, which I actually did not know was, I believe that was either a short story or it was at one point a Universal Monsters movie. You guys in the comments can correct me on that. Because I just remember reading one of the articles saying that it's kind of like a remake. But obviously I think they're taking their own approach to this. I'm very curious to see what this movie as a whole is going to look like. Just because it's the sense of like where this Universal Monsters kind of realm is right now. A lot of people are still wondering if 2020's Invisible Man is still going to be considered like in this realm if they're going with that approach, or is that just going to be a standalone now? I'd really like it to be, because I really enjoy the Invisible Man. But at the same time, I'm not going to complain when you have a cast like Dan Stevens and Melissa Barrera working with the Radio Silence team. I think that they could knock this out of the park, especially with something that's not as, I guess, commercially well known like Scream is, where it's like you have those expectations and it's a little bit more of a tougher, task. Something that's a little bit more off the beaten path, like this Universal Monster stuff.
Yeah, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think Angus Cloud was announced in this property as well. He's from Euphoria, which, again, another very young, intriguing actor. If you're not familiar with his work, definitely, if you haven't seen Euphoria, that's another not horror, but it's a TV show that a lot of people should check out. So it's like I love that they're it's a younger cast, and again, not really knowing where they're going to go with this. If this is, if they're still in that realm of something like a Dracula's Daughter or something like that, it still intrigues me. But I really want to know, what this is going to be. We look at something, the Scream films, where you just look at Scream 6 and you realize, these guys have a great understanding of, you just look at the subway scene of a lot of horror properties, and they clearly have a love for it. And then you look at something like Ready or Not, and it's such a unique property in its own, I think, of telling your own sort of story with a little that is a little lighthearted in a sense, but then gets very dark. I'm intrigued to see what they're going to bring to the Universal Monsters properties here. I mean, we just talked about Silver Bullet. I'm always a fan of, if we're saying Universal Monsters, let's do werewolves. But I really want to see more details on this and what they're going to be committing to. Because I just recently watched the Invisible Man. I did a rewatch of that one, and that film is so good. I really
It
hope
is.
that we get this expansion upon some things, and I think we've been back and forth, hot and cold, mostly cold on a lot of the new Scream stuff, but these guys are able to tell a unique story and bring their own flair to it. So I really want to see this expansion of the Universal Monsters and see what they bring to it.
I agree completely. I would like to see an expansion, and I definitely am curious. I want this to really get the ball rolling on more Universal Monsters, properties. Like you said, with like Wolfman, I really want to see Creature. I
Yeah.
want to see Creature from the Black Lagoon get a redo. I want to see that. I'd like to see a more faithful adaptation of Frankenstein, closer to the source material, since I just really got exposed to that and went through last year, and just like, man, that was something else. So I really want to do that. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. We'll just have to see what comes and what we're going to be looking at. I'm sure these guys seem to be getting this thing moving pretty fast, so I don't think we'll have too long before we get a trailer. Probably maybe by October, I would think so, because I think it's starting to shoot this summer. So we will just have to wait and see. But another piece that got announced that we're very excited about is a new Mike Flanagan project, which, of course, if you know us, we also adore Mike Flanagan. Midnight Mass is an absolute masterpiece. As well as I am a huge fan of Dr. Sleep. Luke, little point of contention there. We're going to have to hash that out on a 4-hour podcast one day. But it's one of those things where we're always looking forward to what he has in store, and he is coming out with a adaptation of a short story from Stephen King called Life of Chuck, which is pretty exciting. We don't know too much about this ourselves, but I mean, Mike Flanagan, Tom Hiddleston, I'm on board. I don't even have to know what it is. Don't even give me a trailer. Just tell me when and where to watch it. I would watch it.
Yeah, again, great casting here. Not knowing too much about the source material other than the little blurb that they give us here. Even the story, the little synopsis they give us sounds pretty intriguing. Working backward from someone's life, I think could be a lot of fun. So, I don't know really what to expect from the story. Again, I'm not familiar with the source material, but looking at it, Mike Flanagan, Dylan already said, Midnight Mass, just an absolute treasure of a TV show. Being a movie, adapting another Stephen King thing, Dr. Sleep for me, I think felt a little bit too bloated in terms of what he was covering. And I know he's working from a giant book of source material. So I know you try to have to be as faithful as possible getting that things in. But looking at that film, I always saw a lot of different potential that you could have went elsewhere with. This one,
not to cut you off, but you do have to admit that The Shining is your favorite horror film. So the expectation there was pretty sky high. I remember it was one of those things where it's like he had a pretty monumental mountain with you. As for me, I love The Shining, but it wasn't like it's them remaking The Thing or anything,
Yes, and what they kind of did with some of the reoccurring characters from the original is more so my point of contention, I would say. But like looking at this is going to be a book. I keep going back to not knowing how long the source material is, but I don't know how many pages this is. So this one could turn out very very well, I guess. I'm not against it at all. You put Mike Flanagan in front of anything, Tom Hiddleston in there as well. It's just something where it's like everything's lining up. I'm just curious to see, what we're gonna get here because the jury's still out. I may actually dive into that source material just to see what we're gonna be in store for. Hey, maybe we can find an audiobook for it, but we'll see what happens. Everything's pointing, good signs. I'm still riding that Midnight Mass high. Hush was great. So I really want to see what he brings here. I don't know, again, the type of horror that we're going with. Stephen King, you usually can't go wrong with him. So we'll see what happens. I think this was, again, great casting news. Mark Hamill's also in this, as we had previously talked about, I believe. So I think this is, again, great casting, a great director, and a Stephen King source material. We'll have to see how this goes.
Yeah, and it does say there's a little blurb here. Deadline details. According to the production, this genre project will draw tonally from Stand By Me, Shawshank Redemption, and The Green Mile. So we're kind of getting into a little bit more of that serious side of King, less, and I mean, horror is serious, but like, a little bit more of that dramatic side, I should say, from this, which I definitely totally get. The only real horror you seem to get from this blurb is that it's ending in his childhood in a supposedly haunted house. So I'd be very much interested to see him flex his, dramatic muscles a little more. He definitely got to do that in Midnight Mass a lot, but then, it always circles back to horror in some way. So maybe this will be a bit more subtle. But yeah, I'm very curious to see how this goes. Again, Tom Hiddleston, I love that guy. I think that he's a fantastic actor. I love the projects he chooses. I mean, he's been in things like the Marvel stuff, but he's also chosen projects like what's that movie? Crimson Peak
Yes.
with Guillermo. So it's like he's not afraid to pick interesting projects.
And he's
So
got great range. I mean, what
mhm,
a more than competent actor. Again, he's like a Dan Stevens, where as soon as he gets announced to any project, you're immediately intrigued.
100%. But speaking of competent actors with a lot going on, we're going to have to talk about Pedro Pascal. Yes, apparently it's been announced that he is starring in Zach Krager's next film, Weapons, which we talked about probably about a month or so ago. I want to say is when we first got that announcement that I
Yeah.
got bought up. But this is super cool. I mean, like, yeah, to have a big name like Pedro Pascal right now, who's just kind of killing it in everything that he does. I mean, he has The Mandalorian and the Last of Us are kind of like his two real big claims to fame here of getting into the cultural zeitgeist. But I mean, he's been in all kinds of stuff, like from Game of Thrones to Narcos, all this stuff, and just to see him really get to this point is pretty exciting. And I love now he's starting to go into horror. Now we're going to see
Yeah.
him flex more of his horror muscles because say what you will, Last of Us horror show, sort of. I think the source material is definitely a little closer to the horror roots, but definitely more of a drama, more of a survival thing. This I really want to see him go into some real twisted horror shit. So I'm excited though. I think this looks good. This looks like a nice pairing. We'll have to see what Zach Krager's sophomore effort brings. Hopefully he's not a one-trick pony and we can keep getting great stuff from him. But yeah, I'm here for it, man.
And Weapons, again, we don't know that much about it at
Mm.
all, but I love this almost shift into the horror realm that kind of the general audience is going with, where when we covered Weapons, we talked about the bidding war with it and how it was just such big news and how many studios wanted this, not really knowing anything, almost purchasing sight unseen, and then giving Zach Krieger so much leeway in terms of being able to get a cut in everything like that and kind of making it a very lucrative sign-on deal. And you don't see that often, but I think something with like Barbarian, it really was this shift. When you look at that film, I mean, it's no secret that we both love it, and it brings something different and new to the horror genre. And then I love that again. We talked Tom Hiddleston, we talked Dan Stevens, where it was such a thing where these actors now are not afraid to dive into horror. It's like these well-respected actors that have a tremendous amount of range want to do horror projects because we're understanding now that the horror genre is this melding of emotion where you're not just stuck in one mode. You're really showing a lot of your teeth in terms of acting, and I love that Pedro Pascal is now diving into those roots of the horror community. I can't wait to see his performance here. Again, all signs point to a very positive sort of film and based off of Barbarian, based off of Pedro Pascal. I love that these new projects are intriguing, I guess more so serious actors and not just actors that are stuck in the horror genre, because I don't think that exists anymore, where it's like we're able to kind of weave in and out. We can do a horror movie and then a serious drama, or a serious drama and then a horror movie. It's one of those things where we're going to get so many tremendous performances. And I think Zach Krieger, very wild, that trajectory. We talked about it when we talked about Weapons, where, he didn't really do too much. He did Miss March, and then we did Barbarian. And now he's kind of at the forefront of leading this horror movement, I think. And I think Weapons is just a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of names you could throw out right now as like at the forefront, but he's definitely one of those like big names. I would say definitely in the running for like top three. And I agree with you on that. I'm excited to see what's going on here. I think it's interesting that they go back to the plot details that they leaked from Weapons here in the article. From when the story was purchased, they talk about it tonally in the vein of Magnolia. So it's going to be something where they call it a multi-interrelated story horror epic. So I'm very curious to see what this is going to be. Obviously we had something like Beau is Afraid come out just a few months ago, or not a few months, a few weeks ago. And yeah, that was something that was, again, kind of that epic, little bit of horror mixed in kind of story from another director who's had a lot of very big accolades. I mean, he's had a few more films than Zach Crager has, but it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is definitely inspiring and nice to see that bigger studios are starting to trust filmmakers to tell these kind of out there bigger stories. And for me, Beau is Afraid worked. I enjoyed that quite a bit. But it's not going to work for everybody. I hope this is a bit more consumable, so that way Krager can have another big hit with general audiences before he can really take the chains off. Because I mean, that's the thing. Ari Aster, he's got 2 films that resonated with people, general audiences. So now he can make something like Beau is Afraid and then still come back, and people are going to show up and see it because it's the Hereditary guy, it's the Midsummer guy. It's like, even if Beau is Afraid was a miss for them, I don't think it's going to be a career killer like everybody wanted to call it. So I kind of hope that that's where he lands with this.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at so many different directors that are really, showing their teeth nowadays, you see the diversity in the horror community where we're not doubling down on a slash or anything like that. We can see these interesting films that are labeled horror, but really just have a melding of different emotions, and they lean on that. And it's something where I think it shows how well the horror genre resonates with an audience as well as actors, because we're attracting everyone to this particular genre because we're going all over with the different emotions. And I think studios are understanding that now, where it's not just an E43 or a smaller studio. It's like where these bigger studios are willing to shell out a lot of cash for original script, just based off another original film, and we're attracting these bigger actors. And it's absolutely, we can't gush about it enough, I think. Where it's like, I think Weapons, again, so positive on this film. I really hope this turns out well, because it's again, all points are pointing positive, but I guess you never 100% know. But I'm really excited to see Weapons in the theater whenever this comes out.
Oh yeah. And so we've talked about some original properties, some adaptations. So why not switch our focus over to a sequel? And this was probably some of the bigger news for the week in the entire movie sphere. They had multiple announcements for this, but we're just going to cover it in general. And of course, we're wrapping things up today with Beetlejuice 2 getting announced for a September 2024 release date. So, yeah, we're not going to have to wait too long for Tim Burton's next outing in the Beetlejuice realm, which, yeah,
Well,
I
we've
mean,
waited long
that's,
enough,
yeah,
so
36 years, they say here. But hey, it's looking good. Obviously we got Michael Keaton coming back. Jenna Ortega has joined the cast, and they've got a whole mess of people coming back. Danny Elfman also returning to do the score. Now, admittedly, I am not the biggest Beetlejuice guy. I it's something I've seen it. I like it. I'm just not one of those diehard fans for it. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I know that this is a story and a property that's near and dear to people's heart. Luke, how do you feel about Beetlejuice? Where do you sit with it?
I'm in the same boat with you. Honestly, I watched it as a kid a few times. It was always one of those films that was on TV,
It
and
is.
I've never revisited as an adult. So I guess, for me, I can't give it a true rating at this very moment in time. I know Beetlejuice, the sequel to Beetlejuice, has been a long point of discussion for what, probably a decade now, of is Michael Keaton going to come back? And anytime the discussion of Michael Keaton would come up, it would be like, well, when is he going to do the sequel to Beetlejuice? And I'm a huge Michael Keaton fan. And from what I remember from his Beetlejuice performance, it is very iconic. There are a lot of great scenes. I mean, even, you just see little clips and everything of some of the line delivery that he had given. It is an iconic performance. So it's not surprising that we're sitting here talking Beetlejuice 2 with Michael Keaton coming back. Again, I think this is a film that I'm gonna have to go back and watch. I do have a love for, the cheekier kind of horror, and I feel like that's what Beetlejuice is. I think it does have some pretty deep horror undertones as well that are kind of, more adult centric. So I do want to go back and revisit this one to kind of give it its true appraisal that I think it deserves, because there is a huge fan base for this one, and I know it has such an the original has such an intriguing aesthetic to it. That's I'm excited to see Tim Burton back in this realm here. And then again, as we've talked about, a lot of casting. There's a lot of intriguing casting attached to surrounding Michael Keaton in the sequel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was trying to pull up. Here it is.
I think Catherine O'Hara's back.
Yes, and then Monica Bellucci is reportedly playing Beetlejuice's wife in Tim Burton's sequel. And then you're right, Catherine O'Hara and Winona Ryder were also all confirmed this week. So, yeah, it's shaping up to be a pretty big return here. I hope it does not disappoint. That's something that I mean, for all you Beetlejuice fans, I hope so. Obviously I want you guys to get what you've had coming for 36 years. But, this is one of those things where it's like, I guess we'll just have to see. I do like a lot of Tim Burton's older work. I love Big Fish, and Batman 89 and Batman
Edward
Returns. Edward Scissorhands is great. It's some of those things where it's like, I like a lot of his older stuff. If you would ask me anything that he's done in the last 10, 15 years, there's really nothing that I can say that I
He did
would
Wednesday,
put on
didn't he?
did he? I think
believe
he
so.
might have done Wednesday then. Yeah. I didn't know if he just produced that or if he did direct that. But
I thought that was his thing, but I don't know 100%. Don't quote me on that. I just know Jenny Ortega was also in that as well.
Did you watch that?
I did not. I've heard a lot of positive things about it.
Yeah, I haven't watched it either. I my wife did. She liked it. So
yeah, so maybe it's one. Addams Family again is one of the ones I used to watch as a kid, but never really dove back into. Maybe I'll have to. But I'm again. This one we'll definitely see it in the theater when it's out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go back and revisit the original. Maybe we could do a review on that at some point down the line.
I think we will. We'll definitely have to get a Beetlejuice review up here somewhere. Maybe even a podcast. Who knows? We could revisit this thing and like it a lot more and think we have more to say. So
maybe it'll be the new Silver Bullet. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know about that, buddy. But yeah, you will see. We shall see. But yeah, guys, that is going to wrap us up for the news. So yeah, that is this week's Sunday Scaries. A little shorter, but definitely some good stuff in there. Again, real excited for Dan Stevens joining the Untitled Universal Monsters project. Dracula's daughter, of course. Life of Chuck with Mike Flanagan, Weapons, Beetlejuice 2, all good stuff, all good announcements, especially in a time when things are a little uncertain in the Hollywood realm. So definitely, take what you can get and hope for the best, I guess. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, and again, every week we say it here. I think this proves another episode of how diverse the horror community is with the expansion of already original properties, and then getting a Stephen King source material back on track, and Mike Flanagan attached, and Weapons casting. I mean, it just shows how lucrative the horror space is nowadays. Every week it's some new intriguing news, whether it's just one story or a handful of stories. But all this stuff I'm excited to consume here in the next year or so, and see what we have, because again, what a fun space we're in.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I love the horror space. But alrighty, guys, that's going to wrap us up here. So definitely get on the channel. Check out some of the content we've been posting. You're going to be getting a lot of reviews coming up here shortly. We got a lot of work to do on our end. Got some exciting screeners, as well as, again, check out Silver Bullet. We just covered that. We are going to also have another podcast coming out towards the end of the month here. And just keep up with the deconstructing the Deadites. I'm going to mess up my own title there. And all the other good stuff we got going on. A lot of interviews, lots of fun things. The Sisu review, you guys seem to be really enjoying that, as well as Luke's interview is climbing up there. So definitely check that out. And yeah, I mean, other than that, guys, that's going to wrap us up. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.